What's up, everybody? It's CSAP, your common sense American patriot. Today, I'm going to be going over a big deal. Dun 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 dun! California general election ballots. I'm going to be going over the propositions that California has going out. I'm going to read the proposition, read the summary, and I'm going to give you my opinion. The number one thing I want to get out right now, first and foremost, is registration deadline. Registration deadline is November 22nd. I'm going to have it down here. In my description area, I'll have a link to where you can go and register to vote. If you don't register, they do provisional ballot the day of voting. It's kind of a hassle. Just go do it the right way. Go get registered, get registered to vote, and then you're good to go. I'm also going to put a link below to where you can find your polling place, because every area has a different polling location. You can't just go to any random polling place. You have to go to your specific one. So I'll post the link below as well, so you'll see that. So make sure you go register and then go find out where you need to vote. And then on November 6th, that's the big day. I am a real American. So now I'm going to move on to the propositions and what they mean for you and the impact they're going to have on you. Okay, Proposition 1 authorizes bonds to fund specific housing assistance programs. Authorizes $4 billion in general obligation bonds for existing affordable housing programs for low-income residents, veterans, farm workers, manufacturers, and mobile homes, infill and transit-oriented housing. Fiscal impact: increased state costs to repay bond averaging about $170 million a year annually over the next 35 years. This is an easy no for me, okay? So I'm going to explain why. Bonds is just a fancy word for loans. That's California is going to take out a loan that's going to cost $170 million a year for 35 years to repay it. And what loan means is, AKA down the road, it doesn't say it in here, but down the road, we're going to need to increase your taxes to pay for these loans. Prop 1's an easy no for me. This state's already in enough debt. Figure out another way to pay for these programs. But I don't want to be taxed anymore, and I hope everybody else doesn't want to be taxed anymore. So they're taking out a loan that it's going to take them 35 years to repay. And AKA, it doesn't say it right here, but what that means is in a few years we're going to have to raise your taxes again because we can't afford for these programs. Obviously, you're taking out a loan. If you can't afford it, it's no. Prop 2 authorizes bonds to fund existing housing program for individuals with mental health illness. Amend Mental Health Services Act to fund No Place Like Home program, which finances housing for individuals with mental illness. Ratifies existing laws establishing the No Place Like Home program. Fiscal impact: allows the state to use up to $140 million per year of county mental health funds to repay up to $2 billion in bonds. The bonds would fund housing for those with mental illness who are homeless. No thanks. Did you hear that? $2 billion. $2 billion in loans the state wants to take. No thanks. Figure out another way to pay for this. No. At the end of the day, here in a year or two, they're going to raise taxes. So easy again, no. I don't want the state borrowing any more money that it doesn't have. I don't want them taxing anybody else. I enjoy my paycheck. I work hard for my paycheck. And I don't like my tax money, my hard-earned tax money, going to all these other programs for other people. Sorry, no. Proposition 3. Authorizes bonds to fund projects for water supply and quality, watershed, fish, wildlife, water conservation or conveyance, and groundwater sustainability and storage. Authorizes $8.877 billion in state general obligation bonds for various infrastructure projects. Fiscal impact: increased state cost to repay bonds averaging $430 million per year over 40 years. Local government savings for water-related projects, likely averaging a couple $100 million annually over the next few decades. Did you hear that? $8.8 billion? No. No, no, no. Look at Prop 1, 2, and 3 so far. 1, 2, and 3. Let's borrow money that we don't have to pay for a bunch of projects. No. We're close to like $10 billion in bonds, loans they want to take out. Yeah, you don't think they're going to tax us here in the near future to pay for all this stuff? No thanks. Prop 4. Authorizing bonds funding construction at hospitals providing children's health care. Authorizes $1.5 billion in bonds to be repaid from the state's general fund to fund grants for construction, expansion, renovations, and equipping of qualifying children's hospitals. Fiscal impact: increased state's cost to repay bonds averaging about $80 million annually over 35 years. Again, $1.5 billion. They're going to have to borrow money. No more borrowing money. Figure out another way to pay for it. Quit spending money where it doesn't need to go. Again, no. Like I said, we're over $10 billion in loans in 4 propositions. So far, so we got Prop 1, 2, 3, and 4 wanting to take out over $10 billion in bonds. No thanks. Prop 5. Changes requirements for certain property owners to transfer their property tax base to replacement property. Summary. Remove certain transfer requirements for homeowners over 55, severely disabled homeowners, and contaminated or disaster-destroyed properties. Fiscal impact. Schools and local governments each would lose over $100 million in annual property taxes early on, growing to about $1 billion per year. Similar increases in state costs to backfill school property tax losses. This one's a tough one. I think senior citizens across this country need more help. And this is one. Senior citizens are not able working bodies. They're living in their homes. They're trying to retire. They're trying to get where they are. And this is trying to alleviate some of the taxes that they would have to pay. We're talking about $1 billion in revenue lost for city municipality essentials. We're talking schools, fire, police, all that stuff. Man, that's a tough one. This was a really tough one. I was leaning no, but after talking with a lot of good people and a lot of fellow patriots, I'm gonna go ahead and vote yes on this. But this one's a tough one. It feels like it's a lose-lose. It feels like if I vote yes, then I'm taking a bunch of money out of the pockets of our fire, police, schools, and education. But if I vote no, I feel like I'm leaving the senior citizens who aren't even able-bodied anymore to try to survive. So I'm gonna look out for the senior citizens here. They need help. They're not able-bodied people that can no longer work. And so I'm going to look out for them on this. And I'm going to vote yes. Prop 6. Eliminate certain road repair and transportation funding. Requires certain fuel taxes and vehicle fees to be approved by the electorate. Summary. Repeals a 2017 transportation laws, taxes and fees designated for roads, repairs, and public transportation. Fiscal impact. Reduce ongoing revenues of $5.1 billion from state fuel and vehicle taxes that mainly would have paid for highways and road maintenance and repairs, as well as transit programs. Okay, this is the gas tax. Yes on the gas tax. Stop taxing me to death. Figure out another way to pay for this. And I just want to show you how big these taxes were that they tacked onto the gases. They were talking about borrowing, what, $8.8 billion over there on Prop 3 or whatever it was, and it was going to take them 35, 40 years to repay that loan. $5.1 billion from the state fuel and taxes. That's how much they're taxing us, $5.1 billion. Get out of here. Figure out another way. Listen, I know infrastructure needs to be taken care of and roads need repaired and other things like that, but stop taxing me. How about stop giving away everything for free and start managing your money? Stop taxing me, the hard working. I work hard for my money. I'm tired of it. I just went to Vegas for the Trump rally last month. It cost me $50 in Nevada to fill up and I got a car wash. I come out here, it's $80, $30 extra. That's a lot of money, especially in rural counties, anywhere where you're not in a city. I mean, in my community where I live, a lot of people commute to LA. They're trying to survive and they're getting killed by taxes. So I'm very passionate about this one. Please vote yes on this. Repeal this gas tax. Stop giving everything away for free elsewhere and start managing your money better and stop taxing us to death. $5.1 billion is what they're taxing us. Get out of here. Go get money somewhere else. Stop taxing us. Prop 7. Conforms California daylight savings time to federal law. Allows legislator to change daylight savings time period. Summary. Gives legislator ability to change daylight savings time period by 2/3 vote if changes are consistent with federal law. Fiscal impacts. The measure has no direct fiscal effects because changes to daylight savings times would depend on future actions by the legislature and potentially the federal government. Okay, so this one's pure just opinion. I'm going to go do a little history on this. Daylight savings came about back when the electricity was not predominant here in the country. So what they did is they would push the time forward to try to get as much daylight and much productivity out of workers as they could. Because once the sun went down, they really couldn't be productive anymore. Well, electricity is everywhere. Lights are everywhere. We don't really need it. So really now it's just an opinion-based. I don't like changing my clocks. It's just a hassle. It's a headache, especially when you got to spring forward and fall back. It's a headache. It's just a nuisance, and it doesn't need. It's just kind of an old law in the books that doesn't need to be done anymore. Let's just keep the time the same. That's my preference. But like I said, this is 100% pure opinion, whatever your preference is. But there's no financial impacts. Prop 8 regulates amounts outpatient kidney dialysis clinics charge for dialysis treatments. Requires rebates and penalties if charges exceed limit. Requires annual reporting to the state. Prohibits clinics from refusing to treat patients based on payment source. Fiscal impact. Overall annual effects on state and local governments ranging from net positive impacts in the low tens of millions of dollars to net negative impacts of tens of millions of dollars. The state, it's a wash. They're not really going to lose any money on this. This is just like to me, this just feels like more regulations. I'm just a private business guy. Let the private practice deal with it. But it sounds like the state's going after the dialysis centers. No, thank you. I don't want the government involved in our lives any more than it already is. So that's my opinion. So I will be voting no on this. Proposition 9 was removed from this election. So we're going to move on to Prop 10. Prop 10. Expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. Summary. Repeal state law that currently restricts the scope of rental control policies that cities and other local jurisdictions may impose on residential property. Fiscal impact. Potential net reduction in state and local revenues of tens of millions of dollars per year in the long term. Depending on actions by local communities, revenue losses could be less or considerably more. This one really isn't about the money. This is about the government trying to get in more regulations. No, 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 no. I don't want the government regulating anything. I don't want them regulating the housing market, the rentals. It's just more power grab from the government, and I'm a big fat no on that. No power grab from the government for me. Let the private sector regulate it. Prop 11 requires private sector emergency ambulance employees to remain on call during work breaks. Eliminates certain employer liability. Law entailing hourly employees to break without being on call would not apply to private sector ambulance employees. Fiscal impact, likely fiscal benefit to local governments in the form of lower costs and higher revenues, potentially in the tens of millions of dollars each year. This one doesn't really have anything to do with money per se. It's more about just having ambulance workers be available and on call at all times for any 911 calls. I used to work on an ambulance. It's not even a big deal. You'd go order your food. Even if you paid for it, you'd get a call. You go and get the call. It's a 911 call. It's an emergency no matter what it is. If somebody's calling 911, it's an emergency for them and you need to get there. So it's not a big deal. They've just taken out, eliminating the liability for the employer for employees saying like, oh, I didn't get my breaks and yada, yada, yada. So it's just reducing their liability. And if you're on a 911 system, you're going to need to stop, drop, and go get that call. It's just how it is. You come back later, you get your burger, and it's not a big deal. So this is an easy one. It's a yes. It's just taking a liability off of employers and making sure that ambulance drivers aren't complaining that they're on break when a 911 call comes in. Pretty common sense. That's where I come from. Common sense. Easy yes. Prop 12. It establishes new standards for confinement of specified farm animals, bans sale of non-compliant products. Establishes minimum requirements of confining certain farm animals, prohibits sales of meat and egg product from animals confined in non-compliant manner. The fiscal impact. Potential decrease in state income tax revenues from farm businesses, likely not more than several million dollars annually. State cost up to $10 million annually to enforce the measure. So we're going to lose tax money and it's going to cost tax money to enforce this. Yeah, this is a big fat easy no for me. Farmers, I appreciate you guys and all the hard work you do. It's not an easy job out there. Thank you for producing my meat. I eat it. I love it. It's yummy. I'm glad I don't have to butcher it in my backyard. This is how the food chain works. We're on the top of the food chain and animals are at the bottom of the food chain. And like I said, I don't want to have to be butchering all my meat in my backyard. I enjoy being able to go to the grocery store and pick up whatever piece of meat I like. I like my steak, my chicken, whatever you want. Now there's more regulations and more enforcement. No thanks, I'm good. So no, and I'm going to enjoy my meat. For the rest of my guide here, I would just highly suggest voting Republican down the line. If you see a name and it's got an R next to it and he's a Republican candidate, I would select that person. It's very important that you vote for everybody because even in your local municipalities, like I've said before, that's where most of your life is affected, is in your local municipalities, in your cities. So make sure you're voting Republican all the way down the line. So starting at the top of John Cox, anybody else who's running at the statewide level, if it's a Republican, I would recommend voting for it. If you have other information, go ahead and go on that. Your propositions, those were my opinions, and that was the summaries. And then on your local ballots, I would just highly suggest voting Republican to keep the Democrats out. Democrats want to give everything away for free, raise taxes, and just make your life miserable. So vote Republican, vote down the line Republican, starting at the top of John Cox. Please share this, guys, because this is very informative, and a lot of people, I think, could get a lot of good information out of this. They don't have to sit down and read and study it. They can just pop on a 10-minute video, listen to it, get a good breakdown of everything, and understand what they're going to be voting for. So please share. I appreciate your support. Make sure to get registered. That deadline's in a week. Get registered, find your polling place, and go and vote. I'll talk to you guys sometime next week because I'm going to be going on vacation. Thank you, and have a good week.